Thank you.
All right.
There we go. All right. So, giving you a moment to get settled. Oh, yes, let's. If you all join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all.
All right. Roll call. President McIntyre is absent excused. Vice President Campbell Voitel.
I am here.
Treasurer Stewart.
Here.
Secretary Meyer. I'm here. Trustee Frazier.
Here.
Trustee Mabry.
She's running a bit late. She'll be in a moment.
Okay. And Trustee Maurer.
Here.
All right.
Thank you very much. So item 4 on our agenda is the adoption of our agenda.
Okay. I'd like to bring forward motion 121 that the agenda be adopted as presented.
Smart.
All right, so we have a motion properly presented by Secretary Meyer and seconded by Trustee Ron. Ron Frazier. Are there concerns with the agenda or any comments, any repairs that people see? Everybody's good with the agenda? Okay.
Yep. Just one thing on this one, huh?
Yes.
Okay, very well. So those in favor of accepting the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Very well, thank you for that. And now we can move to item 5, which is the business that we have at hand in this meeting. And Kevin, can you lead us through it?
All right, let's dive right into it. So tonight we're going to go over the 25-26 initial budget. Just a brief overview of kind of the budget cycle in general. Our year goes from July to June, and so we have to have a budget board approved before July 1st, by the end of June. So this is that action. We have multiple attempts at a budget. So this is our initial budget. We can have an amendment after that, and then a final amendment is normally the cadence that we do here at Northville. So the purpose of this budget is really to try and project next year's financial situation. And the reason that's really hard is you're doing it before the state approves their budget. So the majority of what we do, the majority of our revenue is unknown. And so it's kind of, it's frustrating, but it's something that we've kind of all gotten used to as business officials for school districts in Michigan. I remember last year we approved a budget, and after it was approved by the board, everything got flipped on its head, and the going consensus was, oh yes, everyone's going to go by the governor's budget. That's like the known thing, and we're going to expect this increase. And then it was flipped, and there was no increase, and there was a bunch of changes to the retirement. And so it's really frustrating because it's hard to predict what the state's going to do. But again, this is the initial. So this is our best guess as of June, but we get another shot to clean it up in the first amendment and then also final. So that's the kind of good news. And that the final budget is also important because it's the one that you really compare to the audit, right? So that's going to be the one that you should have a lot of the information. You're trying to get it close, although it's always kind of crazy in school. So that's I just want to get a brief overview of why we're going over this and what this actual initial budget is. So first, we're going to start with our millage rates and our local revenue. So as a school district, we have local revenue. A large part of that local revenue is our property taxes. So that's going to be that 18 mills. So that's going to be the non-PRE. So that non-primary residence is kind of what that stands for. Also known as non-homestead. So it's kind of the main force behind your local tax revenue, right? So that 18 mills really drives it. And that's the highest amount of mills we can collect for our district. You can actually have a hedge on that, and we do have a hedge on that. A hedge is additional mills that absorb a Headley rollback. So you can't collect more than the 18 mills, but you can have that hedge in case a Headley rollback happens and eats away at your millage. You still get the 18 mills. You still get the 18 mills. I don't know if that makes any sense. So this year we received another Headley rollback. So our operating millage was actually reduced from 18.9961 to 18.4699. So it's great because that hedge worked. And it's also great because we're coming up to renew this millage next year. So we're going to want to renew this. It generates about $11 million for us, and we're going to want to put a hedge on it to combat these Headley rollbacks.
Can you explain real quick what that is? I don't know what a Headley rollback is.
So a Headley rollback, it's calculated it's kind of outside of our control, but it's calculated based on property taxes and how fast they increase in the state. So it's meant to fight against a rampant increase in property taxes, right? So it eats away at your revenue generating power as a way to combat that. So in years where there's property taxes go crazy, you see Headley rollbacks. Depending on, it's not everywhere, it's depending on where you're at, right? So in our case, it's a bad thing because it will take away from what you can generate, especially on your 18 mills. I mean, that is your operational revenue, and you need that to operate a district. In other places, it might be okay. We don't have a hedge on our sinking fund, and that's because our tax base grows. Even though it's affected by a Headley rollback, our tax base grows and the revenue stays consistent. If that makes any sense. Mm-hmm. Where you don't want to see it as the operational, because the state is assuming you are collecting all 18, and so you want to hedge on your operational, without a doubt. I hope that clarified the question.
Thank you.
So also on the non-PRE is the 6 mills. That 6 mills, it's in the bottom right corner of our L4029. That doesn't go to us. That goes to the state, and that goes into a giant pot, and that then gets distributed to all districts, right? So it's important for us to collect. Well, not us, but the state to collect. But it gets put into the state aid pot. Again, moving on to all properties. Again, that 6 mills. That's on all properties, so it's going to be on non-PRE and all properties. We also have a countywide enhancement millage that was renewed, I believe, last year. So that's a significant amount of revenue that's generated for us. I know it's decreased because they changed who was able to get those revenues. I think they expanded it to charter schools. So that decreased, but it's still a phenomenal boost to all Wayne County districts and is very important. Our 3.4 mills of debt are staying unchanged. I'll have another slide on kind of what that revenue pays for on the next slide, but that is consistent. We've had 3.4 mil on our debt, and that's going to be unchanged, I believe. Again, it's something you work with PFM based on, it's a number of things based on property tax, valuations, but I believe it's scheduled to remain the same for a number of years. So that's something that's going to stay consistent for the remainder of the 2020s, I believe, which is bizarre to say. And last but not least, on all properties, the 0.9240, that is our sinking fund that we are going to try to renew this August. It did also get hit with a Headley rollback, but again, as I said, because the tax base increased, your actual total revenue is consistent and remains mostly unchanged. All right, so what does that 3.4 pay for? It pays for principal and interest payments on debt that we generated in years past. So these are the different series that we had in the past here at Northville. I know there was a question on, on the 2018 mill, or on the 2018 sinking fund series. Debt fund series 1. Why it was 2016? That had to do with our current debt structure at the time of that series and the size of that debt amount. So that was really the way I had a call with PFM because I wanted to better understand this and I didn't want to miss anything. The way they kind of explained it was like a bridge series, really. It was an $11.9 million series, which is pretty small in the world of debt series for schools, especially schools the size of Northville. And so because of that, it was paid off sooner. I think less than 10 years it was paid off. Whereas the 19 was a much larger series. It was 59, almost 60 million. And so that's going to take much longer to pay off. And that's why you see that expiration in 2042. So this all, it's an ongoing process with your debt mills, property. All the equations change year over year, and all of the projections that they put into it have to be adjusted. And so it's kind of something we do every year with PFM. We go and we say, okay, principal and debt payments were made. The remaining fund balance in these debt funds are X. Our existing liabilities next year are Y. What does that mean? How do we split up that now 3.4 to cover all our debts, our principal and interest payments for next year? And so that's an ongoing process that keeps getting adjusted year over year. So this is just next year's debt payments. Sorry. Okay, so moving on to state aid. So state aid, we are going with the governor's proposal. Again, we do not have a state budget as of today, so it's our best guess with the information we have. That will be a $392 per pupil increase. Main thing to take out of this chart is the 2023 and 2024 years. There was no increase on state aid, and again, that had to do with the side revenue in 147A4 that was given to us one time, which is now going away this budget. You'll see that later in a slide. So that really kind of hurt us. We had a really good streak of funding, which was kind of bringing us to where we're trying to go, which is the how much it takes to educate a student here in Michigan. So that year kind of really hurt us. But we are projecting, again, with the governor's proposal, hopefully that will be up to 10,000. The foundation will go up to 10,000. So one-time funding. Okay. So this is a big one, and this is a very important slide to kind of digest and understand. So because of that, again, what we just talked about, the no increase, that 141A4 was the state aid increase, but it was one time, meaning it goes away. And so this PowerPoint slide tries to get ahead of what's kind of happening next year in 25-26. So as you see, the state kind of sold that no per pupil increase and said, moving forward, you'll see savings of 5.75% in the pension UAL, the second one down, if you see the negative 5.75. The problem with that was the pension normal went up, and then you had the normal health go up. So you really saw a savings of 1.45, which is great. 1.45 savings is great. But it's not great when you take away the one-time funding, which was 5.75. So you really saw a hit of 4.3 in the retirement realm of our budget, which I don't think that was well known when this all happened last year. But it is our reality, and we did record for this budget that savings, but we have to take out that one-time funding, so because it's gone, it's not coming back. So this is really the double whammy of why, when you don't add to the foundation allowance and then you take away one-time funding, it kind of turns into a double whammy kind of year. Add on top of that, which you'll see later, we're losing COVID funds, and that's where the cliff that we've been talking about is really here.
Has the state given a reason for why they did this for 1 year and found it? Has the state given a reason for why they did this for 1 year and felt that that was a sufficient way to handle this? Or have they explained this in any sort of way? Why last year would be the year to do that, or why not continue it?
Yeah, so that was all initiated with a better than expected unfunded pension liability at the state level. So they came back and said, hey, we're fully funded in a couple areas. We got to do something. We can give you revenue on the retirement side and not the state aid side. That was the idea. The problem with it was they didn't really fully, the initial plan was the 5.75 savings, right? Which would be a wash forever. That'd be a continual savings, but they didn't account for the pension normal and the health normal. Both of those went up. So it was a great idea, but there was kind of things that were missed in that conversation. And we're all waiting for the correction to say, hey, we're now dealing with it this year. So we're hoping next year in the state, in the budget, not that there's anything in there, but the guy can help, that they say, hey, we realize that you guys took a hit on this and we're going to correct that, but there's nothing solid in the state budget that says that. So it all really stemmed in a liability that was better than expected. And they said, oh, because this liability that the states, districts are paying off, we're going to save you on the expense side. You don't have to, less is going to come back to us in this one-time funding. And we're going to reduce the pension UAL from 20 to 15. That sounds great, but then there's other things that happen. So I think that's kind of where it all stemmed from.
It's confusing because doesn't that money come from, they're saying we have these fully funded areas doing better than we thought. Here's that money from those areas. But then it's like, these other areas increased more, so we need the money from the fully funded areas to cover the other areas. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, so all of these are different buckets.
Right, yes. So they're saying, here
retirement.
we've got a full bucket.
Yeah.
Here's some money because this bucket's full. We can't put any more money in this bucket. Oh, but we didn't realize these other buckets aren't full. So we're going to take the money that should go in this full bucket and put it in the buckets that have space.
So one of the buckets that we're talking about.
I like the bucket analogy.
know,
My brain appreciates it if you can continue
it's
it.
like buckets within buckets, like Inception. One of the buckets that we're talking about here is normal health. And the reason why that increased was that was actually a savings on the backs of the employees, not the districts. So then the employees paid that liability in the past, and they said, you know what, let's give these people that have been in the system for a long time a break. You no longer have to pay into this.
So, and that part of it was where Representative Colzar and I helped them with that. We were actually funded at north of 120% in our retiree. And I really got to see that time. It would have been a year ago, May, June, the kind of really ugly side of politics, in the sense that they initially were not going to not only return it, but actually take that and use it for tax credits for businesses and things of that nature. So I think the macro answer to your question, Karen, is unfortunately, when something like that is there, sometimes politicians see that as an opportunity not to say, well, you're overpaid in it. We should make sure that either the employee or the districts get relief. Instead, who else can we help who maybe has helped us? And that's my own editorial comment, not the opinion of NPS, but of RJ Weber. And what I'm really scared about now that I do want to raise a red flag about as we consider this is I'm hearing little whispers around the Michigan Public School Retiree Fund being refinanced in order to pay for roads. Again, that is something that people who taught their whole lives, educators their whole lives, people who are in retirement count on that. So playing games with that is really disappointing as well. So to answer this one here, and this is a really complicated slide, and as Devin said, the shell game of, hey, look, oh yeah, but. So.
Yeah, so I think it's It's unfortunate, but I think understanding it is very, very important so that every district knows where they're at.
Yeah.
And they're not surprised at the end of the year and saying, wait a minute, where'd that revenue go? Or wait a minute, why are our expenses higher than we project? We projected a 5.75 savings and we're only seeing like a 2. Like, what's going on here? Well, that's why you have these other increases to account for. So super important. And also a reason why when you see $2.9 million leave our revenue, it is that 147.84 coming off our budget. An additional revenue coming off our 25-26 budget is that COVID funds 11T. So that's $930,000. Adds, again, this is part of the COVID cliff. I know it's been talking about this for years. We are finally here. I feel like, this is, it's like a chapter in my life. Like I've been dealing with COVID funds for so long, and to finally be done with them on an expense and revenue side feels great, but we also know that we will be audited on these funds for the next 5 to 10 years. So next year is the clip. We are losing that funding.
Part of that 11T money was like held over. We could still be using it for a little bit. Is that correct? It's gone. We've spent it all.
It's all expended for.
Okay.
Yep. It is on our CFA, which is our schedule of federal awards.
Okay.
It is closed out.
Okay.
So,
perfect.
it was actually closed out by September. So
I knew there was a September date. I just couldn't remember if it was.
Yeah, so it was early in last year.
Yeah.
So it's been actually in September this year. It'll be a year from using COVID funds.
All right. Thank you.
Going back to the previous slide, can you talk a little bit about the stabilization UAL? Is that intended to offset that additional funding from the state to offset the other increases, or what is that exactly?
The stabilization UAL is actually still up in the air. It's an in and an out. So it's revenue we receive, and then we immediately turn around and pay it based on the number of employees we have. And so every 20th of the month, it comes in through state aid, which is when our state aid hits. Okay. And then throughout the year, we're kind of managing that revenue because it's based on an actual percentage of salaries paid. Right. And so at the end of the year, you have to true up that state aid, the final, August state aid payment, and what you paid out. And there's a little bit of, okay, I'm going into the weeds here. So our year ends June 30th. Our books don't close until the end of August, right? Because our teacher contracts go through August. And that's a part of this calculation. So through July and August, we are fine-tuning that number to make sure that the revenues equal expenditures and we're good, if that makes any sense. So that's given to us from the state, and it's an in and an out. So it's really not a hit, it's a neutral. That's why I said budget neutral. It's like, if it goes up, great, we'll get more revenue to counter it. If it goes down, okay, well, the expense will go down too. So that is just a part, that's one of the pieces of the equation. And really that has to go back to when this when it all happened, where the state came in and said, well, actually every district owes a part of this liability. That's part of it, right? You're going to get it in state aid, and then you got to pay it, help pay it off. So, and then the COVID. All right, enrollment. I think we've talked about this. This is from Sanfred, our consultants that we use for enrollment. They kind of do a big picture and look at trends and help us to get a good number on what to expect. I know earlier in my presentations, we talked about this. We talked about the projections, and the projections are really a slight increase. I'm going to go to the next slide. Yeah, so the projections are a slight increase, 26 for this upcoming year. And that's, again, the tail end of the Young Fives program is really pushing that increase. That is projected to be the last increase. The following year, 27 and 28, 26, 27, and 27, 28, birth rates are going to come back and take over, and you're going to see a declining enrollment. this is the projections. Again, this is a third-party company that does it. They do it for a lot of districts throughout the state. But mostly it's the birth rates driving that. Now, there's a couple good things, in my opinion, that could affect Northville. One, if interest rates do drop, there could be some movement and turnover on housing. Some younger families could be moving in. And then also the downs. You have a massive project that could generate some movement, again, stirring up, maybe people move out of their house to go to the downs and that frees up space, or young families move to the downs. It is pricey, but those are two unknowns that aren't really in the numbers because we don't really know what it's going to mean for us. We are an established district. There's a little bit of projects going on, but for the most part, we're an established district.
Are the special ed numbers a little bit easier to predict?
Special ed numbers are harder because there's so many unknowns there. So we actually just move whatever our last year numbers are. We use that as our projection.
So it's not because you're firm in knowing that. It's just that's the prediction.
It's hard to get a number on that.
Especially when you're dealing with, so many different districts that bus in to cook.
Mhm.
I mean, they'd have to work their projection magic on all those different areas too.
I guess the reason why I asked that is I thought we pretty much know where our special needs kids are. And if they fall into our net or not, it seems like, unless their families pick up and move, which is always a possibility.
So this chart kind of helps talk to that conversation. The bottom is the general, the top is the special ed. So you can kind of see that we've been hovering around 250, 220 for the last number of years here. Mm-hmm. And Stanford will even say, I can't predict that number. That's a unknown number, so I would use last year's. And so they're kind of consulting you to say, or nudging you to kind of use last year's because it's a hard number to kind of nail, especially a year before. But again, that's something we keep very close eye on. And so hopefully by next fall, the fall count, we'll have an updated number on that, and that'll be used for the A1 budget.
When do we start to get reports on projected for next year?
When is the audited numbers? I think it's the end of October for the audited?
For enrollment?
For enrollment.
You'll start seeing those numbers. You saw a graph, a real brief graph in the Friday update a couple of Fridays ago. There wasn't a lot of changes between then and now. I'm actually in it right now making some updates, so you're going to start seeing more and more of that.
When do you usually have the best idea? Is it not till I know
Well,
so that was in
school is already
September and
started.
October, I know.
For our purposes, we really care about that fall audited count.
Yeah.
Because that goes to our state aid and that dictates
That's in
funding.
September.
And remember, the counts that I'm giving you are head count. Devin works in the world of FTE, so head count and FTE are different. I staff to head count. The body is there, the body gets the teacher.
The difference in terminology would be, head count is butts and seats. FTE is your full day here. Is your full day in Northville or are you split? That's your percentage now is your FTE. So yeah, this is the trend. The good news is it's stable. Most districts, a lot of districts in the state right now are declining. But again, next 2 years after the young fives, we could be in that boat too. So something to definitely watch and get ahead of. All right, moving on to the expenditures, our change in revenue first and then expenditures. So for the general fund, this is the change from the final budget of 25 to the initial budget in 26. Property taxes, expecting a slight increase, and that's on trend. That's just an historical number to use. Because of that, it's going to take away from state aid. When your property taxes go up, they assume, again, that 18 mills, the state's saying, yeah, I know you're collecting it, so we're going to pull back on our funding because I know you're collecting it on the property tax side. So you're going to see, although an increase in state aid because of the $392 per pupil increase for the governor's budget, and then also a slight FTE increase. So that's going to generate a $2.4 million increase. Other local revenue is actually a decrease in investment income. I have a slide later in my watch points to highlight that, but there's a significant decrease in our investment income, and that's due to the potential of interest rate cuts next year, depending on what the Fed does. That's a revenue source you don't always count on, and which is hard to say because like it's part of your revenue, so how do you not count on it? Well, it's so tricky. We all lived through just not that long ago the zero interest rate stage. We could easily go back there if we have a debt crisis in the United States, right? And if the Fed cuts, then we're immediately affected, and now we lose over $1 million of interest revenue like that. So we're decreasing it in the expectation that the Fed cuts rates at some point next year. That could change, and then we would amend it during the A1 or final. So it's just it's our best guess. 147A4, again, that 2.9 million coming off. ESSER 11T, ESSER 3 coming off at 903. So overall, we're actually, even though we're seeing an increase in our state aid and an increase in our student count, our FTE count, we're seeing a $1.3 million decrease in revenue, which again is part of what we've been talking about this whole time, right? The one-time funding in ESSER. Moving on to expenditures, wages and salaries. This is going to be due to contract changes, and again, we are still negotiating. We are negotiating tomorrow, so that is an ongoing process. But this is our best guess based on where we think we will land. So those have an increase of $1.6 million. Again, that is an estimate based on what we know today.
And I'm not expecting to hire any net increase in teachers.
I did not. I had a zero net increase.
Okay,
It was stable.
stable.
Yep. There are retirees in that number. I think I only put 6 in there. I believe we have so far. So that is about 30,000 per retiree. So that decreased that. You have the contract increases and your retiree, but overall it's a $1.6 million increase. Other benefits, medical and dental, slight increase. All other benefits, that's mostly a decrease of 42,000. That's mostly due to the loss of the 27K grant. And then MIFSR's cost offset, there is the savings, the 1 point, how much time am I doing? Oh my gosh. Okay. There is the savings, the 1 point, okay, so remember we talked about it here. 1.45 under the total at the top.
Mm-hmm.
There you finally see it in your expenditures. It's just under $1 million savings. But again, it doesn't touch the 2.9 million we lost in revenue. So it's a huge swing in the wrong way. So overall, salary and benefits will increase just under $1 million because of that savings, mostly. Purchase services, we have new contracts with both Durham, GRBS. We have some contract increases and some also adjustments to transportation, which the budget's needed some adjustments. They were a little on the lighter side. So we increased those contracted services. GRBS, $150,000 increase based on the contract. The good news is with GRBS, it shouldn't increase in the 27 year. This should be a one-time increase. Overall, just under $500,000 increases on our purchase services. Supplies and utilities. Utility cost increase of $64,000. This is a small increase this year. We hedge our utilities. Next year, we're going to see an even bigger increase. So our initial budget next year, pay attention to utilities. There should be a substantial increase.
All those
More to come on that.
LDE light bulbs didn't save us anyway.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we had a great savings, but you can only hedge out so far, and eventually you re-up. So, again, more to come on that next year. Overall, supplies and utilities increase of $80,000 next year. And then also capital outlay. There was some timing on capital outlay. So capital outlay that was supposed to hit last year is going to supposedly hit, or is planned to hit next year. So that accounts for the capital outlay increases. And that has to do with a lot of the cook improvements based on, that are funded by RISA, that one-time funding. So overall, total expenditures are increasing 1.6 million. So you have a decrease of revenue of 1.3 and an increase of expenditures of 1.6. This is really fuzzy. Let me get to my slide. Maybe it's my eyesight.
No, mine
Because
is.
of the heat. All right. So overall, when you take the difference in revenue and you take the difference in expenditures, you're looking at revenue of 99.1 million, and expenses of 102.8 million, which leaves a deficit of about 3.7 million. So looking at the final budget, we're ending at a deficit of about 700,000. So this is adding another 3 million to our deficit. And that is what we talked about, the one-time cliff and the COVID cliff. And which leaves us at an ending fund balance of about 27.8%. So this is, as you can see, these are the different categories. You can kind of see them broken down by object, salary, wages, benefit, purchase services. The next slide is the same information, but by function. So you have it, it breaks out the revenue, local, state, federal, interdistrict, operating transfers, and then all the different expenditure functions.
I'm sorry, could you go back to slide 17? Did you say that fund balance would be 27.8%? Because am I on the wrong page? I have 24.6.
Yes, so that was something that I presented at the COW. It was a formula issue, and I corrected it. So it was pulling that initial, the reason why I was doing it was, it was pulling the initial starting 24 fund balance.
So
And
our packets are incorrect, but that slide's
Yeah.
correct?
This is correct, yeah.
Thank you for bringing that up. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry, I interrupted your explanation.
No, it was a formula issue. So I corrected it. The starting fund balance was the difference. It needed to be 32 million. That's the starting fund balance. And that again is based on why it's 32 million is because it's pulling from the prior slide or the prior column, which is the final budget. So where you're ending on your fund balance should be your starting initial fund balance,
Okay.
right? So that was so for some reason it pulled, and it was like the only place that it had that weird formula. And so I was looking at more of the deficit to make sure the deficit made sense. I wasn't looking at the fund balance. So
Okay.
I apologize for that.
No. So can we just get that corrected slide?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
I can shoot it over to Megan.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so the same information just by function. Again, I kind of broke it down by function earlier. Again, at the bottom, you're seeing that $3.7 million deficit, starting fund balance of 32 million, ending fund balance of 28.6 million. This is now a historical trend here. Just for context, how much time I got? Okay, cool.
20 minutes.
Yeah. So as you can see, this is 4 years of actual information. So that's going to be audited information. And then you have the final budget, and then you have the initial budget. So as you can see, again, you're seeing that revenue decrease from the final of 100.4 to 99.1. And then you're seeing the expenditures increase from 101.1 to 102.8. And you see the deficit difference there of 750,000 to 3.7 million. And the bottom is a percentage of expenditures to revenue. And why that's important is if it's above 100, you're in a deficit, right? Because your expenditures are more than 100%. So as you can see, the final is expected to be 100.8 and the initial is expected to be 103.8. So a 3% increase. Okay, other funds. We have other funds where, fund accounting is school finance. And so we have a food service fund, early childhood fund, special education fund. That's going to be the interplay between Act 18 and general fund. There's an interplay there. Important message or important note on the food service fund is we have a fund balance limit, and it's based on your annual expenditures. So it's your annual expenditures divided by 9 times 3, and that gives you what your fund balance needs to be. So it's 3 months of expenses, basically. So that equates to just over 1.4 million for us. And so that's something we're very carefully monitoring. Again, these funds are all also kind of playing on the state budget, right? Are we getting funding and national and federal budget?
I was going to ask about food service. Have you accounted for the fact that maybe we won't have the free lunch and breakfast?
We did not account for that.
Okay.
Because we don't know. Yeah, we don't know. So that's something we will, again, mid-year be adjusting for.
Okay.
It's kind of unfortunate. We have to have a budget before we know, but it's something we can always amend in the final. So these are all funds that interact with the general fund and have transfers to. Also, in addition to that, student activity, which was prior to GASB 84, that was a student activity account. But now, per GASB 84, had to be calculated as a special revenue fund and then be also audited. Sinking fund, that is our sinking fund that we utilize to help support our facilities. And then public improvement fund, that is a fund that was generated through the sale of land with the old building. And so that would be used for a purchase of a building, improvements of a building. So that is currently has no expenditures in that fund.
That has stipulations on how it's utilized?
Yes. Okay. All right. So moving on, watch points for this upcoming year. I know I talked a lot about it, but just to kind of rehash, there is currently no approved state aid budget.
Hey, Devin, is there currently an approved state aid budget?
No.
Okay.
And it's frustrating. So the majority of our revenue is unknown at this time. So this is our best guess. The May revenue consensus revenue estimating conference, the CREC, had a weird kind of mix of emotions. The state aid fund looked better than the January CREC. The total state fund looked worse, which is great for us, but at the end of the day, the state is the general fund, and that is the fund that it has to be in a good spot. So it's good, but I have caution. But again, based on that, the state aid fund looks like it's in good condition. So next year, it looks like we can, again, hope and count on those increases. One-time grants, there is, in my opinion and a lot of my colleagues, there is a initiative to slowly reduce those one-time funds or one-time grants and one-off initiatives and put it into the foundation allowance. So it's something we just have to keep an eye on, right? As we have those funds in all those different buckets, which ones, when the state budget comes out, which ones are we keeping, which ones are the allocations changing? And we just have to really keep an eye on that, eye out for that so that we can adjust accordingly and in time.
As long as they add it to the per pupil allowance.
Right.
Not just.
Right.
I have a question about that. Do you think that's, for those of you with a longer education career, that specified money, when you put money specifically to a targeted population, say rural students or whatnot, is that a kind of come out of COVID thing or tied along with that? Historically, have we funded, individual populations like that?
So I think the easiest way to wrap our heads around that, give Devin a chance to wipe the brow here a second, is think of Title I. on a federal level in Title II and Title III. So that would be an example that many people could wrap their heads around and understand. Title I is basically based on free and reduced lunch. You get more money in those pieces. To Treasurer Stewart's point, the danger in what's being proffered right now is the number looks bigger, like, hey, 12,000 instead of 10,000, but they back out all of those additional categoricals, and the districts that would really get deeply harmed by that game are districts that are deeply in need. So those districts, to your point, they get more monies. That good policy, again, good policy makes sense. I think we've become a cynical, maybe a little bit, maybe since COVID, about institutions and governance and so on. And I'll speak about it in the superintendent's report. If you look at Cook School, for instance, if we didn't receive the additional dollars it takes the allocations to service that population, there's no way we could do it. That's good policy. Those students and families didn't ask to be in that position in life. So we as a society and policymakers said, we're going to go ahead and allocate more money to support the students there. So if that answers your question, think of Title I, II, and III as the simplest thing. But we've also used 31A, 31N6, and so on. And to Melissa's point, the real fear here is the shell game with somebody looking at it and saying, oh, wow, it's more money. That's good. But give me 12 and then back out 3. I'm at 9. I'm down $1,000 of what we could have had. And that's just in a very general way.
Yes.
Enough of a break?
No, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I apologize for the people that the AC is out, that we lost power during the middle of the day and the AC never kicked back in. So that's why it's a hot box. It is not my doing. Yeah.
Don't read too much into it.
You're just making us sweat.
Yeah.
I have heard they're thinking of doing another cruck because of the May numbers.
Oh,
Have you heard?
I'm sorry, what?
I heard that they're possibly thinking of doing another cruck, like in July or August, because the May numbers were,
Wonky?
Yeah,
do you know if they're going to, or?
no idea.
Okay.
I mean, that would be great, but again, it's too late for us. Where all of the schools already have to have budgets by the end of June. So if they have it in July, it's mostly, I think, for Lansing. But it would be great because then it would help us with our amendments.
Okay, thanks.
All right, so also some watch points. Again, 147A4, we're losing, so that's the big one-time chunk coming off. Pension, what are they going to do with this upcoming budget with the UAL and pension obligations to school districts? Do they have another opportunity to help us increase our revenue, either on the pension side or state aid side? And then investment income, what we talked about earlier. This is our chart of investment income. So as you can see, if they cut rates in 25-26, that is revenue that will be coming off the table. So it's revenue that you can't really count on always. You have to always have an asterisk next to that revenue because it could be gone in a year, like as you can see, or you could get more. 2021, 2022 to 22, 23. Rates changed. You saw a massive increase on what we can generate in our investment income. So this is something you always have to have an eye on. Enrollment, we talked about young fives already, and then the birth rate expected to kind of take over in 26 and 26, 27, and 27, 28. And then the revenue cliff, COVID, losing that $900,000 also adds to the problem that we're going to see in the 25-26 school year. And then this is the fund balance. So as we talked about it, let me get to it because I apologize. I know it's small, but as you can see, the audited fund balance is the third to the right, or from the right. So that is the 34% audited number. The 2025 budget has a 32 expected fund balance, 32% fund balance, and then a 27% fund balance. So you see a decrease because of next year's deficit. You see that decrease in fund balance going from 30s down to 27%. And that's kind of what we have talked about in a controlled planned use of fund balance, right? Doing it in a way that is physically responsible, and also you can then, it's not a spiral, it's a controlled descent.
And
So,
if I could take you back to 2011 and 12, you're going to see, obviously 2011 being a significant low point, talking about that's a level where the state comes in and monitors you and so on. And so for people in the community who might not understand how we got that rise, that was really unfortunately on going to privatization in transportation, going to privatization on our custodial aspect. And those are what Mike would say is, RJ, every low piece of hanging fruit we could find, we did. So don't get into this notion that we still have that capability of a bounce back, having done those things. And so you guys know I'm a historian and a teacher. And just as we look at these pieces and see it, and Devin made a great point about variability in investment, variability in numbers. And Kim, thank you for your communication to Devin earlier, acknowledging the fact that so much of this is really changing in so many ways. But that 11 number, it is shocking how quickly we can arrive back there if we don't make good and right decisions for the long term. And that's a place that we never, ever want to be, because the decisions then you're making that impact kids and other human beings are really, really, really awful.
I know we're running low on time here.
You got 8 minutes.
Any questions?
Oh, that's right.
Any questions?
I don't have a question. I just wanted to say I appreciated the email with all the detailed responses. So thank you for that.
Absolutely, happy to do it.
Is that Eric?
Yeah, we just had the air come on.
Yeah, air conditioning.
And thank goodness, because we have a whole spring sports cadre coming in that he would have just went.
The seats there. Well, thank you, Devin.
Thank you, Devin. And if I may please thank Devin, your team. I know that the audit began this week. The audit team was up there on the 3rd floor, and they'll be with us this week again. And this was your first crack at really getting into it. So well done. Thank you.
Yeah, on that point, shout out to Deb and her team upstairs, getting ready for that audit and working with the auditors. It's gone really smoothly, and they're coming back Thursday, so yay.
All right, so this is our one opportunity for public comment in this meeting. Do we have anyone who would like to? Do you have a blue card?
No, but there are two, actually.
Oh, I have a second one?
Yeah,
Oh,
this is like the hearing part of it. I have my own, you're good. So, yes, we're good. I don't have any comment cards.
Thank you. All right. Well, since we've all had a chance to ask the questions and get the clarity based on our notes and our guidance from Devin, thank you very much for this budget hearing meeting. And with that, we'll call it to close.
You have to do
public comment again.
How come I'm only seeing one public comment?
She was talking about this, you were here.
Public hearing questions
Yeah.
versus public comment. All right. This is a second opportunity for the public to
Well,
speak.
are there any added?
Well, did I ask that?
Yeah, there are none.
Thank you. All right, so we have no edit agenda items, and now we have a second opportunity for the public to participate in this meeting. Comments? None. All right, with that, we're adjourned at 6:25.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Devin.
Yeah.